and welcome to the PreSales Podcast. It's your host and PreSales Collective General Manager, Chris Mabry. Today, we have a fantastic episode lined up with none other than Ron Whitson. The episode's titled Mastering Human Skills and Growing into Leadership. Ron's been in the industry over 30 years. He brings a wealth of insights to the table. In our conversation, we dive into everything from tackling imposter syndrome to becoming a standout pre-sales pro by focusing on what Ron calls human skills. Think about the soft skills. We also chat about the importance of continuous learning, leadership. We even sneak in a bit about tennis and his English garden. I'm really excited about this one. I think you will be too. Thank you for tuning in. Let's jump right in. Ron Whitson, welcome to the PreSales Podcast.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a huge honor to be here and be part of this. So I appreciate the opportunity.
This is your second time in the pod, your first time with me. And my first question to you is, why the heck does everybody know who you are?
That's a really good question. I mean, I really think it goes back to a little bit of an effort on my part to be more active on LinkedIn and put some thoughts out there. I'm not gonna lie, it was scary at first, but it was something I wanted to do. I've not been the best networker throughout my career, but almost 3 years ago now, I started putting some effort into it, and the results have been amazing. There were a lot of people who enjoyed engaging with the content I was putting out there. That opened up some different doors and some different opportunities, and it's been an amazing experience. So I'm really glad that I took the time to invest in that because it's been a great ride.
We're here today to talk about things like imposter syndrome, human skills, growing in the leadership. But there is this part of me that's like, actually, I've never told you this before, but when I first interacted with you, I think I saw a presentation you did, and then I saw you on LinkedIn a lot. And I think the first time you and I connected, I had a bit of imposter syndrome talking to you because I had seen the name Ron everywhere with the little tennis ball, you know? It's like the tennis ball was everywhere. And I saw you speaking and I was like, this guy's good.
Oh, man.
And I remember the first time I met you and I was like, okay, maybe I can play on the same court to use the tennis theme as you. So I felt a little imposter syndrome, but now that we've become friends and now that I have this crazy job running PreSales Collective, I understand that, hey, it's something everybody deals with. I think the moment you realize that everybody's in that same boat, it kind of makes it feel easier.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so we're here to break apart a lot of things. Before we do, though, you've been in this game a long time. Everybody has like a unique path to getting into pre-sales. So Tell us a little bit about how you got here.
So I've been in pre-sales now for 26 years. 3 of that I actually did spend on the dark side as a seller because I wanted to add that to the resume. I saw a lot of great pre-sales leaders, and some could get things done and some couldn't. The ones who could get things done seemed to have that sales experience, that sales background. So I made a choice to add that. So I did for 3 years, and it really gives me a lot of empathy for the very hard work that our sellers do. And I think it makes me a better partner to them. So again, very happy to have done that. I was in IT 10 years before I got into pre-sales, doing anything and everything you could imagine. I mean, I was a programmer, database administrator, worked on hardware, ran network cabling, wrote software courses, instructed software courses. So again, seriously, anything in IT you could think of, I had done. And my good friend Shane Phillips, who was working with me at the time, he went to this company called Main Control. And in October of 1998, he called me up and he said, Ron, there's this thing called a sales engineer. I think you'd like it, and I think you'd be good at it. And so I was like, hey, it sounds pretty good. So I went and got the job with Main Control, and then Main Control was acquired by MRO Software. And so I learned a new software package and started presenting their tool called Maximo. A few years after that, MRO was acquired by IBM, and IBM was 340,000 people at the time. And that was a wonderful experience. It was my first chance to become a leader. And they actually put me through their leadership training, which was transformative for me. It was a really great experience. And then from there, we went to a competitor, which was a really bad fit. And that was just for 9 months. It's my shortest tenure anywhere. And I don't want to talk about them. You can look on LinkedIn and see what I'm talking about, but I just do not like them. And from there, I got into a really small company called Avara. And it was very complex maintenance software around this concept of RCM, reliability-centered maintenance, which is using temperature and pressure and vibration analysis to understand when something's going to fail. That company was acquired by Bentley Systems, which is I believe it's the oldest software company in North America, ran by the brothers. They do a lot of project management, construction management, those types of things. They want to add the maintenance to it. And then back in 2017, my good friend Brian Ivanovic took a chance on me as a senior SE at a company called Percolate. And then Percolate was acquired by Seismic in November 2019. And now you're all caught up.
Oh my gosh. There's like a few things I'm thinking of right now, and maybe the audience relates to some of this, which is like, I always think of the intention to connect yourself with a current sort of platform, product, company. And your story reminds me that it is a real journey throughout all the technology types, all the different companies. You're going to go through a lot of M&A, merger and acquisitions, to break that up. You're going to go through a lot of innovation. What's been some of the things that stayed the same? Because I'm kind of picking up on the fact that you probably learned all kinds of new technology every single time. But like, what are some of the threads that you find that have stayed the same and consistent throughout the whole thing?
A lot of it is really about the ability to accept change and expect change. I think as human beings, we're pretty funny because a lot of times we complain anytime anything changes. But if you actually look at our life from the day we're born, it's constant change. Someone recommended to me the book, Who Moved the Cheese? It's a great, easy read, and there's so many people who aren't familiar with it. So that really helped with this idea of accepting change and being a change agent. And at the same time, there have been a lot of personal things in my life that kind of pushed me into that direction as well. And I've just found that if I anticipate change and expect change, and I'm not surprised when it happens, that makes life a little bit easier for me. And the other thing, too, is as we're talking more specifically about the things we do for work and acquisitions and stuff like that, two things. I think it's really easy for people in pre-sales to become bored. We have very active minds and we like this new stuff. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us to put our hands up and say, hey, I want to go learn that. Real quick story. When Main Control was acquired by MRO Software, it was a very different sell, a very different package. MRO Software was IT asset management, where you're selling to IT organizations. And Maximo was work management, where you're selling to blue-collar maintenance departments. And again, I stuck my hand up and I said, I want to go learn how to sell Maximo. Very, very different product. And I'm glad I did. But the really cool thing was the audience was very different. It gave me different insight into, when I'm presenting to IT, here are the things I kind of expect. But when I'm presenting to a different audience, I've got to act differently. I've got to interact with them differently.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, just this idea of that change is always going to happen. The second one, too, especially when companies get acquired, is you have a lot of people who lament that the culture is changing and this is changing and this.
Yeah.
And they're really bummed out about all the changes. What I have found is there have always been wonderful opportunities for me during the acquisition. So I'm looking to find, where can I add some value? How can I help? And again, that's one of the reasons why really over 26 years, it's only been 4 different jobs, because I do pretty well through acquisitions and stick around for a bit.
Yeah, I think that focus on like expecting the change is crucial because we're in tech. First of all, smart people get bored, and the last thing you want to do managing a team of smart people is give them boring tasks with no real value. So as a leader, you try that one time, you'll never try it again. But expecting the change is really crucial. I think a lot of people get comfortable, myself included. I remember the first acquisition I went through, I was real young. I was like 20. And the first time my company got bought, it was like, oh my gosh. I was able to move with that organization. As a 20-year-old was super exciting. I was able to learn so much. I ended up leaving that and went somewhere else. But there is a ton of opportunity on the other side of it. A lot of people listening or in the profession at the moment, I guess it doesn't change that much, but at the moment, the job market's pretty tough. And I was working with an old colleague of mine, principal level SE, who is feeling a bit of imposter syndrome when it came to networking. You know, he connected with me because, look, I do like hundreds of these public-facing things a year now, and I'm consistently working with people. He felt that even though he was a principal level, like super, super smart, there was a little imposter syndrome when it came to, I don't know if I should be the one sharing. I don't know if I have anything of value to share, right? I'm going to ask you, because I think you have also felt that in your career, as you
100%.
stated to earlier. Have there been any recent times where you've experienced this? Are there any stories you could tell us?
I'll share a couple, but yes, imposter syndrome is a real thing. That was one of the things I had to get over as I started putting content out on LinkedIn, because you sit there and you worry that, well, people aren't going to like it, or they're going to think it's stupid, or they're going to think it's obvious, or whatever else. And I'm very happy saying that really hasn't happened. There haven't been those mean people out there.
And if they're out there, then there may not be the people you want to connect with anyway, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I've told this story before, but basically, MRO, who again had the maintenance tool Maximo, we decided that we wanted to add a calibration module to our offering. Now, calibration, if you're not familiar, think about pharmaceutical, think about manufacturing, where you've got different devices that you're using. Maybe you've got a scale, or you've got something as an instrument. And when this scale says 10 grams, you need to know it's really, really 10 grams. So the process of calibration is you go to this instrument and you've got this nice little case of weights, and these are called standards. And you take out the nice little 10-gram standard and you put it on the scale and you record the reading. And if it's off a little bit, you make the adjustment. And now you know that this scale has been calibrated. So we wanted to add that. The practice of calibration is referred to as metrology sometimes. So we built this. We hired a person for the product team who was familiar with it. We built it, and now it's time to go start showing this product. And the wonderful opportunity of showing the product falls on this guy. And the people that we are showing it to is this group of pretty smart people at Sandia National Labs. Now, understand, Sandia National Labs pretty much wrote the book on calibration metrology and things like that. And I'm going to be presenting this to a room of 30 PhDs.
Yeah, it sounds terrifying.
It was. It's 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm just an SE. And Chris, I got to tell you, I sweated over this presentation for a long time. I did a lot of preparation. I was very, very well set for it. But still, I've got the little things on my shoulder saying, oh, man, what are you doing? You're not a PhD. You can't talk to these people. And I came up with something that I told myself, which made all the difference in the world. And what I told myself is, you will never have the experience of the people in the room. It's impossible. There's no way. But more importantly, that is not your job. Your job is to be an expert on how this solution addresses calibration. And the more I thought about that, the more relaxed I became. So show up and I give the presentation. I show the product demonstration of how our module works to do the calibration tasks that these guys were talking about. And they didn't stand and applaud, Chris, but they did applaud at the end of it. So,
wow.
So I think that little subtle change in my thinking, I don't have to be an expert on this topic. There's expertise in the room that I can tap into. I have to be an expert on how my solution addresses this business challenge, this thing that they're wanting to do. And it just gave me so much inner confidence and a calmness that allowed me to perform the way I needed to perform.
Well, that's awesome. You've done a lot of speaking as well, and you've done a lot of recent work with content, which we'll unpack here. Are there any highlights? Because you're all over the place. I think I'm working with you on events throughout the rest of the year. So how did you get comfortable doing that?
Slowly. But putting a little bit out there and having it received positively and seeing the way people engage with me has given me a lot of confidence on moving forward with some of this. And another thing is, for many years, I've tried to help others in a little bit of a mentor role and things like that. In my leadership opportunities, I've always been able to find people who I think have wonderful potential and then try to help them grow into the role and develop their skills further. And when you see this success and saying, hey, I've got some advice, why don't you try this? And you see them try it and they have success, they come back and they say, hey, that was wonderful. That kind of helps reinforce that, okay, maybe I'm on to something here. So over time, I've developed a lot of different ideas and concepts about how I approach our profession. And I'm happy to share those with people. They don't have to use them. I mean, they can take advantage of them if they would like, but it's been really gratifying to see people take some of these ideas, make them their own, employ them in their career and get some success. So that really has helped. It's been validation of, yes, these are the right ways to approach these tasks.
Wow. Well, I'll go ahead and plug PreSales Collective because there's so many opportunities to do that community. My first speaking opportunity was at Leadership Next a few years ago. And I found that giving back to the community and finding people to mentor and finding opportunities, maybe I'd review somebody's demo and I would listen to my own feedback and I'd go, you know what? That's not that bad. That's not half bad. I think I know what I'm talking about here.
Exactly.
And the feedback is generally I just want to run something by you. And if you're there to listen and you listen actively, I mean, I've gained so much from that professionally, personally. I'm still connected with folks there. I also want to use this opportunity to say that you wrote a book.
I did.
So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
A lot of us have a book in us. I have a book in my head that I've been considering writing for a while, and I don't know what'll happen. I don't know if it'll come out. I'm excited to explore it more. But you actually did the thing. And I think it's really cool that you put pen to paper and you're putting yourself out there. So first of all, just massive congratulations. I mean, I think that's a really cool endeavor. Your book is called A Friendly Human in Pre-Sales. This podcast is titled Mastering Human Skills and Growing into Leadership. What do you mean by human skills? You use this word a lot, and I want to know, what do you mean by human skills?
What I mean by human skills is this nebulous thing that we all hear as technical sellers about how we need to improve our soft skills. And, you need to improve your soft skills. You need to improve your people skills. And this is something that I heard early on in my career. Again, I was a very highly technical person. And as I approached the job, it was like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to rock the demo and all my technologies work perfectly. I'm going to have these slick slides and all this kind of stuff. But we didn't always win everything. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? So when people would tell me it's the soft skills, it's the people skills and stuff like that, it's like, that didn't resonate. That really didn't resonate. And so as I started looking into it, and this is really what the book is about, it's the story of my journey and the things that I've discovered, I categorize and I put together, I'm actually calling them 7 timeless behaviors. We can talk about them in a minute, but I feel like as technical people, we want more of a instruction manual. We don't want this vague, hey, go work on your soft skills, go work on how to talk to people. We want, hey, here are the 7 things that you need to do, and here's some ways that you could work on improving them. I think our brains are just wired to receive the information better that way.
There's not this moment where people say, well, you just need to do better at it. It's like, wait, that's not measurable.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, I tied to that. That's not going to help me. I can't wake up in the morning and just be better at something. You got to have a process here, And
what's funny is, that's typically the feedback we get about our demos from the sellers. Oh, no, it was great. Good job. It's like, that doesn't help. I need something that I can actually, work on. Again, I, like a lot of people in our profession, I felt like there's been a book up here for a while, but what I struggled with was the purpose. What purpose does the book serve instead of just some kind of vanity project, right? What good is it going to do? And to be complete with a story, I've become familiar with Mr. Chris White and his book, The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. And reading through that, it was like, wow, this is just the story of how Chris found his way through the profession and how he approaches his task. And I think that's an excellent framework for the things that we do. And that kind of started kicking some triggers in my brain that, well, maybe, I could explain my approach and it could be helpful to people as well. So that's kind of the early catalyst for how we decided, okay, now let's start putting these thoughts on paper or into a document so we can move forward.
How did it feel when you got the first package of books delivered to your house and you opened them and you could actually feel it for the first time?
It's amazing. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a real deal. And boy, you talk about a great antidote to imposter syndrome. You get a case of books showing up at your house with your name on them. It's really a book. I mean, it's a thing, right? So you're like, oh, that's amazing. There's been 2 times. Well, there's been 3 times, and I'll describe all 3 of them. So on the publishing platform, you're able to upload the manuscript and upload your cover design, and then you actually see a representation of it you can flip through. It's like, that was cool. But the next coolest thing was actually when the first proof copy showed up and you have a physical manifestation of your thoughts and your ideas, but it's got this ugly gray band on it. So it totally obliterates the subtitle of the book. But then the actual case of books shows up. That was an amazing day. So that was really cool.
Oh man, you're making me want to get on the project. I do so much content creation that just writing another thing out is really tough. But every once in a while, I wake up sometimes on the weekend even, I'll wake up and think, oh, that would be good. I just have these thoughts.
Do you have like an empty document that you throw those thoughts into?
Man, my phone is so full of notes and documents. Every single dog walk I take has got 15 pre-sales notes in it, And when I think back to your journey of being through so many acquisitions, I can't believe you only worked at 4 places because you named about 15 of them. The one thing that has stayed constant is those soft skills. Right. Absolutely. That's the thing that never goes away. Like you can learn up on tech. You can read the released candidate notes. You can plug in, I used to have a demo environment and a server behind me, and you're always working on product. But it's like, that thing's going to change, man. And let's say, you move organizations, you take the next opportunity. guess what? That stack behind is going to be a different stack. I mean, now we don't really even do that anymore. We have these really cool demo environments that are hosted and all this stuff. So aging myself a bit, but the soft skills don't go away. I'm curious on continuous improvement though, because you know what happens to me is anytime I go through a workshop, or we had Chris White at a company kickoff. I'm watching him present. I loved it. That's how he and I became friends. And it's always like this big moment of, oh yeah, I should do that. Or I need to do this a little bit differently. And it's almost like I can read a book and, I read your book and I still walk through things that I need to do differently, even though I've been in the game for almost 25 years. It's like this continuous process of reminding yourself or learning. I know you're a huge fan of continuous learning. So why is it important to you? What's your take on it?
It goes back to a couple of things. It goes back to this idea of being bored. I don't like being bored. So I like to have new things. I think it's amazing that, again, you and I have both been in this game for a long time, and there's still new things to learn. But I also think that if we were practicing attorneys or if we were medical professionals, those careers have continuing education credit things that they have to do year after year to maintain their certification. Yeah. Why have we not applied that kind of rigor to sales role and technical sales? We just rely on people's results. I see a lot of pre-sales people who spend time and effort on learning the product and working on their demo and sharpening that. But how much time do we really devote to some of these human skills and the things that we need to work on as far as connecting with people? Because from what I've seen over many years is a lot of the people who have this pre-sales and engineer brain, that's the more difficult thing for us to do. So it's just interesting that we don't devote the time to actually work on those things. And as far as doing it on a continual basis, I mean, the thing that's helped me is practicing these things have driven results and people have taken notice of those results. So, so that's kind of kept me going. It's like, if I do this, then I'm making more money and I like money. And so that kind of helps motivate, right?
Yeah. Like you have a technical background. I have a technical background as well. And I understand the shift to leadership is a big change. Do you feel like this helped you get into leadership? Like, how did you make that transition?
So what helped me make the transition was this idea of helping others and kind of like we talked about the mentoring stuff. And just to add a plug for PreSales Collective as well. For the PreSales Academy, there's different levels where people can contribute. Mentoring is a light lift, guys. It's like a couple of phone calls and a mock interview. And if you're a pre-sales professional and you're kind of getting on your career, you want to find other ways to help, do that. Reach out and volunteer to be a mentor. You will get more out of it than you ever thought. It's really amazing that you actually get something back from it, but you do, and you'll like it. So plug for that. Being recognized as a performer, that certainly gets people's attention on you, right? Yeah. Now, the very unfortunate mistake that a lot of companies make is you take someone who is a good performer and you say, well, now let's put them in a completely different role leading people. And we don't give them the skills that they need to succeed in that new leadership role. What saved my bacon on that was the leadership opportunity came with IBM, and they actually put me through some training. And the training wasn't, the stack of HR materials I needed to memorize and be able to regurgitate. The training was focused on this idea of 360-degree reviews. So I had to fill out a really lengthy review. My peers filled it out, my management filled it out, and my team filled it out. And then throughout the course of the week, they were revealing it to you a little bit at a time. And it was all about, we have a perception of how we're presenting ourselves to the world. How closely does that match people in different groups who we're working with? That was eye-opening. I'm happy to say that was pretty close in how I thought I was presenting and how I was being perceived. But that was a really interesting concept. It really got me to thinking more about the team and how I communicate with the team and those types of things. And for me, my job as a leader is to take the message and the vision from the company, translate it to the team, make sure the team has what they need to get the job done, and then be a resource to them to help remove obstacles and make sure they're hitting different goals. There's a long-winded answer to your simple question, but yeah.
Well, it's not a simple question. I think you're right in the fact that you got a little lucky. You had this built-in enablement. And at PreSales Collective, before I came on board, Eugene and James designed this program called Leader Elevate, which was designed to basically put in place of an in-house leadership pre-sales training program. Because a lot of companies I worked for didn't have anything close to that. When I got into leadership, man, my first one-on-ones were just, hey, how you doing? Totally clueless, right? Luckily, I had an HR business partner. And again, I think actually through the last few years, a lot of companies got rid of that role that helped coach and mentor me on how to do simple things like a one-on-one conversation. But a lot of us aren't lucky enough to get that. What I see oftentimes is like what I do, and I'm using air quotes, is the super SE, basically the best SE, the one that sales loves becomes the manager because they are so ingrained in the product and they're ingrained in the premier customers. They're well known and well celebrated.
Yep.
They may be the SE that goes to President's Club, et cetera, et cetera. They're not really acting as a real leader or manager. They're kind of the super SE who comes in and swoops in and saves the day. They're still acting as an individual contributor. They're not really full-time management. And there's a big difference. That's a whole nother podcast to break down. But there's a big difference between those two things. And I think the training you received is great. We do some of the Elevate programs. We're going to probably do one in December. We're trying to find a way to fill that void. And maybe we can do it in content too.
Yeah, I love that. I've actually facilitated a couple of the Leadership Elevate courses, as you know.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great program. I guess if I had to distill leadership down to a less windy answer than that last one, for me, one of the things I discovered early on, again, I was super arrogant leader early, I'll admit it. I mean, again, technical guy, very smart, knew all this stuff, was doing really well on the role. So it's like, oh, now I got this leadership. Like, oh, just do what I do. It really was a lesson that the more I focused the spotlight on the team instead of me, an amazing thing started happening. I didn't have to trumpet my own accomplishments any longer.
Exactly.
It reflected back on me. It's one of those things that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense unless you've experienced it, but focusing on the team has done this, never using the words me or I or my or stuff like that. It's our team. Really made a big difference in how I was perceived and how the team performed. So I think that's a good lesson.
That is good. That's definitely worth taking a note because it was the most, it's like when you're an individual contributor, especially a high performing one, you're used to having to sell yourself and talk about your performance in the organization. Yep. And let's say you have a leaderboard with all your KPIs, technical wins, POCs, POVs, however you track performance. You may be at the top or the middle of that leaderboard. You're consistently kind of looking at it through that lens.
Yes.
When you get into leadership, this is the visualization I use, which is your job is really to walk around the town square, holding up the sign with the project and the name of the SE on your team who's nailing it. And you're just consistently walking around showing that sign to everyone saying, no, this is what my team is doing. This is who is doing this. This is who is doing that. You're consistently championing your team. And the more you do that as a leader, the more respected you are, because you go into a leadership meeting, nobody cares how you did. They want to know if your team is performing.
What's the performance? Yeah. That's a good visual. I like that. Another thing that we're really getting into a lot now, I know you're talking about this very soon, is the idea of KPIs and metrics. And I think that's lovely. I think it's kind of funny that we have a lot of effort at operationalizing sales. Yes, there are things that we can do to make sure we're not missing things and that we're on the right track for following a sales process. But to me, sales will always be more of an art than a science. And I feel very strongly from the pre-sales role that a lot of the metrics that tell us how a pre-sales professional is doing are much more qualitative in nature than quantitative. Number of meetings isn't going to tell you anything. Achievement against some quota to me really doesn't tell you anything because there are so many things outside of our control from a quota attainment standpoint. The things that I believe indicate whether someone's a really good pre-sales professional or not are more around their ability to make relationships, their ability to achieve that trusted advisor status, their ability to problem solve. And I'm sorry, you're not going to have any metrics on that. So
yeah, I just went down this rabbit hole with David McCauley, and we were talking about this too. I'm super interested in the art of influence as a pre-sales team. How do you influence go-to-market in general? The more influence you have, not ownership, there's a difference between influence and ownership. The more influence you have, the more revenue you influence, the more you can do. Essentially, it gives you freedom, right? But tracking influence is super difficult. And the last thing you want to do is track time like you're tracking time as a lawyer or something. Like we don't have like minutes. that we track as pre-sales individuals. But I think it's easy for us to fall into the idea that if we only tracked our time, then we can prove our value. And what David was talking about is the simple fact that the results in revenue, the results in the deal, the results in the relationship are our sort of unquantifiable metrics. That's very difficult to scale, though. And it's hard to go to your CRO and say, I need 5 new headcount and just trust that we're the best at building relationships. It's a double-edged sword. It's a sticky problem to figure out.
It really is. It's interesting too. I think, again, with our engineer brains, we start looking for the numbers involved in our day-to-day work that we could build metrics around. But there's a really good book out, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar, called Measure What Matters by Dorr. And it's a story about what they did back in the day at Google and things like that. The idea is that just because you've got this number that you can measure and calculate doesn't really mean that it has any say. You've really got to understand deeper, what do these metrics mean and how do they affect performance and tracking the performance. So if someone's really into the topic, go check out that book, Measure What Matters. I think it has a lot of great insights that could help you think down the road a little bit.
And some people are in a tough situation. Some people are working for a CRO who doesn't want to hear that. I don't know. It's something that I'd want to unpack more as a community and more of our content. I do have a few presentations on it coming up this year, but I think it's like one of these sticky pre-sales problems that we need to discuss enough to where we have enough like ammunition when we go to the meeting,
I'll give you another little interesting topic. I don't want to go back to something else about leadership, but as we're on this topic of metrics, I think there's a very interesting note in that it can also be impacted by performance. So I've been at companies where revenue was coming in hand over foot. And because of that, if there were operational efficiencies, well, it really didn't matter because revenue is coming in, right? People didn't need that additional layer of scrutiny. And I've been at companies where revenue was tough to come by. We were actually trying to build out a category. And because we had to make, every dollar count, we were very operationally excellent in processes and efficiencies and things like that. I think it's probably safe to say that a lot of companies now are struggling. So now we start to see some of that struggle impact some of the things that we're doing, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes in negative ways, putting that additional pressure on the organization to perform or prove out if a team is performing or not, so decisions can be made. So I think a little extra interesting twist to put in there is the concept of, how are you doing? Are you doing well? Then things are probably good. Are you doing poorly? Then things are probably a little bit tougher. But going back to leadership, just another leadership thing too, and this is actually one of the timeless behaviors in the book, is this concept of show empathy. And so I think as a leader or as a manager, because this is more of a manager thing than leader thing, and I do make a distinction between the two, when you get into that role, it's really easy to feel like, okay, my job is to keep everything on track. So when you have those one-on-ones, it's easy to immediately get into, hey, Chris, where are you at today? And, are you going to be able to hit this deadline? And what opportunities are you working on? As opposed to, hey, Chris, how's it going? Did you guys go work on the house this weekend? I think if you just take a second at the beginning of those calls and you imagine yourself in the other person's shoes, do you want your leader to check in on you as a person? Do you want to jump straight to business? Some people may be a little bit different, but I think if we just take a second and think about, the other human on the other side of the Zoom or the other side of the phone and just show some empathy, some compassion, I think that can go a long way towards having that be a good working relationship.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I'm super empathetic guy, and almost to a fault sometimes. I think when I started in management, it was all about how you're doing. But here's the thing, we were actually in that same situation you described where we were just, revenue was coming in, man. These people were just buying stuff. You could give them a 20-minute demo on how it worked one time, and they were just an average buyer. They were consuming your product all the time. But guess what happens? My theory is that a great product creates very bad salespeople. And a great product creates, a lot of operational inefficiencies. What happened as we worked there is that the market caught up. Guess what? You're no longer the number one name in the house. And guess what? Somebody else does it cheaper.
Yep.
All those salespeople who just leaned on the product, it was exposing them. It was almost like the beach went out, right? And it was like, hey, here's who's actually doing a good job. And it's easy to think that we're the ones who win the deal. But as I always say, it's like, product is winning the deal with you. They're buying the product. So it's your product team, it's your PMM, it's your marketer, it's everybody. It's your leadership that are helping you feel like you have a home where you work. That's helping you win that deal. that team effort is so crucial. I'm going to ask a closing advice question, and then we'll hit it over to the lightning round because that's a fun one. You have a lot to say. You have a lot to share. You have a book that's dropping. But if you were to give our audience some closing advice, you could even choose 1 or 2 points. What would they be?
This is going to be some advice I got from an IBM executive during my leadership training that they gave me. And it's something that I think that I've done a decent job of employing, but it's really, really simple. And the advice is this: run to the problem. There always are going to be challenges that you're facing, that your company is facing. And there are plenty of people who are going to be, looking for an opportunity to point fingers and say, well, Chris, your team really should be stepping up here. Be the person who comes up with a solution and says, hey, we can do this. And then be the person willing to roll up your sleeves and help contribute to that solution. Having that mindset has made a lot of really wonderful things happen for me. So I stand behind it quite a bit.
I think of the same methodology when it comes to I'm kind of an operational nerd. I love finding inefficiencies and fixing them. Hence why I run a community. There's a lot of that. Find the thing that's annoying everybody. Find the thing that kills time for everybody on your team and just go fix it. It could be something simple, like you need to adjust your Salesforce fields. There's 3 Salesforce fields you no longer use. People just leave them blank. Contact your Salesforce team, get them removed. Find that really annoying problem. So find the little thorn in the side and fix it, and then find the fire, right? And run straight into it.
See, now you've touched the nerve, because I see this all the time where a leader or whoever, there will be some little annoying thing, just like you described, that needs to be fixed. But the excuse is, well, I'm just too busy to take the time to fix it. Or the opposite happens where it's like, well, it's quicker if I just do it myself than take the time to show you how to do it, Chris.
Yeah.
You understand that if I spent 15 minutes doing that, all that time saved over the course of the next several months, it's an exponent of what we're talking about here. But yeah, when you find that if you're walking down a path and there's a little stone that you're always stepping on every time you walk down the path, take the 3 seconds and get the stone off the path, fix it.
This isn't a relationship advice show, but boy, if I had one piece of marriage advice, it is be the person who picks the thing up. Okay?
Yes.
This is my concept. Be the person who picks the thing up. It doesn't matter if it's your thing. Okay? If you're stepping over something at home, pick it up. I have 2 young kids. We have a busy house.
Sure.
And I do not play that game of that's not mine. I just pick the thing up and it makes life easier. So
if you don't pick it up, you're going to step on that Lego and that's not going to be good. So
you're going to do it again, and if it's not you, it's going to be someone else. So just pick the thing up, right?
Love it.
Let's head into the lightning round. The first question is, what are some of your biggest pet peeves in sales engineering or solution engineering demos?
Biggest pet peeves around demos is people who use the mouse for emphasis. And just the whole idea of running a demo as a training session. You're trying to teach, and again, I started off this way, but you're trying to teach the audience how to operate the software. That's not your job as a pre-sales person.
I think I once wrote down the fact that pre-sales or sales engineering is education, and I was completely wrong. You're not an educator. You're not here to educate your audience. You're not here to teach them how things work. That's not what you're doing. Maybe implementation can do that. Maybe prof service can do that.
You're a convincer.
And you're not an educator. Okay. What is the number 1 book you recommend to friends?
Wow. The number 1 book I recommend to friends from a business standpoint has been I Hear You by Michael Sorensen. It really is more of a relationship book, but for those of us with our engineer brain who need to work on empathy and active listening, it's excellent for that.
That's wonderful.
I Hear You.
What's your favorite song at the moment?
I'm into 80s music, which is the best music of all time. No question.
Yeah, I would say it's a great era of music.
There's an artist who I've loved for many, many years. I've actually got to meet him a few times. His name is Howard Jones. There's a hard rock Howard Jones. It is not him. It's the 80s synth pop guy. Things can only get better. What is love? Not the Hathaway, what is love, but the real what is love. But anyway, he's continued to make music. I believe he's 64 years old. He's always making music, always touring. And there's a song that was on an album a few years ago that's just kind of stuck with me right now. It's called Tin Man Song. It's really, really good. And in this current environment of AI and all this stuff going on, this song is about an artificial intelligence who is dreaming of human emotion. So it's a good tie-in for me for lots of reasons. But Tin Man Song by Howard Jones, that's just kind of stuck on the repeat for right now.
Nice. When you're not busy writing books, being a VP of pre-sales, what do you do?
I play a lot of tennis, and then I work on my pool and my garden in the backyard. It's more of a English garden that's got a lot of different plants in it. And it looks pretty good right now because we've got some rain and some cool weather. So the flowers are very happy and keeping the pool up. We've got a nice backyard. We'd like to spend time back there. So that and play tennis, that's about it. That's what, the tennis ball is there for a reason.
I actually wanted to open it up and ask you about the LinkedIn tennis ball, but I didn't know that you were actually into tennis. And when I saw it, I was like, what is that? But now when I see you do when I met you, it was obvious because you have tennis rackets behind you. But it is a cool tool because when I see anything you do, I see that little green dot and I know it's Ron. And I'm like, I don't have one of those on my LinkedIn, but I think that was a really smart move.
Thank you. It was like, oh, look, here's a tennis ball emoji. Let's stick it after my name. That's really interesting because sometimes I see that instead of just the tennis ball, it's actually a racket. So I don't know what the story is on there, but different versions of the emoji, I guess.
You've done a lot in your career. What's something that most people don't know about you?
I've been on like 3 different reality shows.
What? Okay. What are we talking here?
Oh, goodness. So there was a local show called Fast and Loud with Richard Rawlins and Aaron Kaufman, where they were doing, building cars and motorcycles. So it's not too far from me. So I went down there, was on set one day. There was another one with Rick Fairless and the Strokers Biker Shop. I was on that as part of the cast one day. And then there was another reality show around creating a proposal that was on many years ago that I really can't talk about.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's very surprising. And Ron, just to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So if you want to get a hold of me, I'm all over LinkedIn, just, Ron Whitson. It's pretty easy to find me. You can email me at ron.whitson@gmail.com. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the book, I've got a landing page set up for it. It's timelessbehaviors.com. So you can go and you can find out some more. You can sign up for updates. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Okay. I'm going to add all that to the show notes. And then part of my process is I'll put this on LinkedIn as well with the photo, and I'll put them in the comments so that people can connect with you. Thank you so much, Ron. I feel like this is the first of many. I really appreciate you. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. Until next time, take care.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, y'all.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me today on this epic adventure with Ron Whitson. We covered everything from tennis, strategy, leadership, imposter syndrome. It was a blast diving into Ron's experience. I can't recommend enough that you give him a follow. I had the chance to read his book, really resonated with me. Ron's story is a great reminder that we're all in this thing together. We're learning, growing, connecting. PreSales Collective is a perfect place for that. We're thrilled to have you with us on this journey. If you found today's episode valuable, please reach out to Ron, share your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going on LinkedIn. Your comments mean a lot to us. They help us know we're on the right path. At PreSales Collective, we're all about these 3 pillars, the learning and growing and connecting. I'm convinced more than ever this is the way forward. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next time, keep pushing, connecting. We'll talk to you later.